Hello, I've got Theo here, and this is really exciting. Theo and I have met before. Last time he was interviewing me, now I'm interviewing him. But can we start with because you have a background in law and order, so can we start with Palestine Action? Because I think your
Right.
perspective might be better than mine.
So, yes, my background. I served 7 years in the Metropolitan Police Service. I served in mostly safeguarding type departments. So, 2 years on emergency response. That's a uniformed officer come to your call if you call 999. A year of domestic violence investigations, another of missing persons, and then the rest of my time in human trafficking and modern slavery intelligence.
Yes. So uh, people have been arrested for belonging to a prescribed organization. I think there's only about four prescribed organizations that I can think of. There may be more.
There are a goodly number
Oh,
now,
really?
most of which are organizations you would want prescribed,
Like
um,
ISIS and
like ISIS.
Al Qaeda.
Well, yeah, and if I can remember one, I think National Action, the far right, full-on Nazi group,
But
Atomwaffen, another Nazi group.
not Homeland, which is another Nazi group that's come up recently. Uh,
Um, yeah, it takes time, but as well as state entities like the Wagner Group.
the Wagner Group, indeed.
Mhm.
And now Palestine Action. And
Yes.
I've done a few videos about this. I find it disturbing that I don't have any sympathy for people who sabotage equipment or destroy things. I don't really like that activity. But at the same time, I don't see that that's akin to being a member of ISIS, killing people, encouraging people to be killed. It doesn't seem to me that Palestine Action is doing much more than spraying paint on things. They may be a nuisance, but I don't quite understand why they've been prescribed. Um, and what worries me, and you may contradict me, and you're very welcome to contradict me, what worries me is that this sets a precedent for any organization that any future government may not like, and we don't know what future governments we're going to get. That precedent is now set. Even if the government claw back, the precedent is there. And I think this is incredibly dangerous.
So do I.
Good.
And I find it slightly ridiculous that for the purposes of the tape, I have to say that I do not support Palestine Action
Oh, nor do I.
before I am going to go into this.
Yeah. I,
Nor do I
I think
support,
Palestine Action is the wrong approach.
yeah,
But at the same time, if you just take the two words, Palestine Action, those two words are innocuous. And somebody could quite
utterly.
say, oh, I commend Palestine Action
Mm.
without realizing that they are, in fact, thereby using those two words, supporting what is now described as a terrorist organization. It is madness, and particularly when
It,
somebody's holding a banner.
utterly, and it's undemocratic. And Palestine Action are an organization that has carried out acts that I disagree with.
Yeah.
I don't think that we should be attacking our military infrastructure because at the moment we rather desperately need it. There are other threats in the world and there are other issues. They've also got you know, this disease, which I see amongst especially those on the hard left, where they rightly call out a genocide as it can be described as nothing else that is happening in Gaza, but they will apologize for another one that is happening in Ukraine, or at least being
I
attempted.
want to pick you up on that, by the way.
Hmm.
I think it's very important to be careful about the use of genocide. So although I think Israel's treatment of Gaza is abhorrent and potentially genocidal, one has to be really careful about using a legal term. I did a video about this morning, and of course, various people went down my throat about it. But genocide is a very specific set of circumstances, and I'm not sure that Israel actually is committing a genocide. If you very carefully analyze it, there is an argument to be said, there is an argument to be made that exonerates Israel, that the bad language and the encouragement to genocide, because genocidal language has been used, be in no doubt.
Absolutely, it
Yes,
has been
but
used, and it has been used
it's been used by
by
people
both
like
sides.
poetry. Yeah, absolutely. It's been used by Hamas, absolutely. So there's no
Yes,
question
I
that
say
Hamas is
sides.
doing.
Sides is questionable. The main victims here are ordinary Palestinians who
Yes,
are
absolutely.
starving.
But that doesn't necessarily amount to a genocide. To establish a genocide, we would have to see the genocidal rhetoric being used by the Israeli High Command. That is Netanyahu and the army. Now, the army, as I see, the army orders are very explicitly countering that idea. They're explicitly trying to avoid civilian death. They're not succeeding. They're not succeeding, and you've got Smotrich and the other one and one or two, and some stupid things that Netanyahu said. So there is a case to be made against genocide. I entirely agree with you that it is genocidal in effect and that it is abhorrent. But I think one has to be really careful about using that term genocide because it's a term bandied around by people like
What
Owen
we have
Jones and
is to go to legal terms. What we have is the actus reus,
yes,
the guilty act.
yes, we
Whether or
have the
not we
Guilty
have
Act.
the mens rea
Yes. Oh, very
is a
good. You're very
question
good.
is a question that that will, I think, be answered by historians. However, what we have now,
And judges.
if you don't want to call it genocide, we can call it mass death.
We
And
we could call it collective punishment.
yes,
Owen
collective punishment,
absolutely
and there have been
justified.
calls for ethnic cleansing,
Yeah,
and we see the same carried out by Russia. Russia is engaged in the temporarily occupied zones in the cleansing of Ukrainian identity. They ban the Ukrainian language, they ban
absolutely.
Ukrainian literature, and they, as has been reported repeatedly, are grooming Ukrainian children to be then sent to fight against their compatriots on the front lines.
Which,
In
but again, I hate to be the devil's advocate here. It's very difficult to pinpoint the language which is used to generate that genocide in among the Russian High Command.
I would pinpoint it where Putin says, paraphrasing here, Ukraine is not a real country, it's an invention. Everywhere Russian boots step is
It's
Russian
Russian
land.
land, absolutely.
Things like this, they build an idea which is poisonous to an individual. I remember interviewing Paul Conroy about his experiences uh, working in the former Yugoslavia in the wars of succession. And he said, whenever you see a conflict like this, it's always somebody saying, I'm not going to do his Scouse accent because I can't. It's them over there. They're the ones at fault. And if we just get rid of them, then we'll be fine. And
And
we see that,
we
we
we see
do
that
see
exactly.
that.
But Theo, that's the language which could amount to genocide. It's definitely genocidal language. But if it's not coming from the very top, and if it's not directing the soldiers to genocide, that's not genocide as such. And that's
Well,
where
at that point, I worry that it becomes a useless term that you're going to be able to, because leaders
it's a
have lawyers.
subjective term. It's a subjective term, Theo, which unfortunately has got legal weight. And I think when the dust settles, both the both the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the escalation in Israel will be judged to be genocide. But at the moment, I think we're jumping the gun a little bit to to define both. But definitely the genocidal action in both. I think the Israeli army must be separated from the Israeli High Command. I think the Russian army, unfortunately, is
The Russian army is a collection of gangsters
well,
fighting
yes,
amongst themselves and
and also
fighting the Ukrainians.
and also victims themselves who've just been sent to the front to die. Um, and I hear stories every day about people, about mothers in beauty salons who are saying, "What can you do?" And you hear these horrible stories about their sons or people in their family who have been sent to the front, and they and the next thing you know, they're either badly wounded and blind, or they're dead, and they have no military experience.
I think when it comes to, I think we're going to get on, and we've definitely sidetracked from Palestine Action.
I'm so sorry.
Um,
I'm so
no,
sorry.
I think when it comes to the Russian civilian population and the greater Russian population, the only thing that will stop a repeat of what they are suffering now, and it's because they have, as a, yeah, Hannah Arendt talks about power and violence, right?
Yes.
And power as consent. From what I am seeing, and you have a bit more into this than I do, the Greater Russian Police has given its consent for this action.
I disagree entirely. I think you cannot give consent unless you um, are informed, and the greater Russian polis are tormented with propaganda day and night, and a lot of the stuff they're
And
fed
he,
on the
but
television is fake.
it is fake, but it remains, and this is something that is going to have to be tackled because otherwise we're going to see this kind of action from the Russian state again, or the Russian Empire. It remains an empire. It's Europe's last great empire, and it remains at its core culturally imperialist.
Oh yes.
And that is something that needs to be changed. And that's what I refer to when I say giving of consent, is the imperialism that cuts so deep in Russian society that there needs to be a decolonization, to use a term from the left, of Russia. And what that looks like depends on what Siberians, Tatars, Ichkerians, Nanuks, etc., want. And a chunk of
It
them want
also depends on
independence.
it also depends on how many people knowingly or unknowingly help the Russian state. Um,
Yes. Well, the Russian state, there's not much other than it
well, it's becoming
anymore.
increasingly repressive, and so for example, I was listening today to people talking about FSB jails. That this is something that hasn't been seen since the end of the Soviet era.
Yeah,
People are
we're
just
seeing
imprisoned.
repression worse than I would say most of the Soviet era.
Hmm.
I think and this is why they are rehabilitating Stalin.
Yes, and why I think our greatest fear should not be that Russia attacks the UK. Our greatest fear is that Russia descends into civil war with nuclear bombs.
That's something that can be mitigated against. I mean, we're going to get deep into the into
We should get back
post-war
to Palestine
Russia,
action, shouldn't we? I'm so sorry.
but some people. I mean, I recently interviewed the Prime Minister in exile of Ichkeria, a very intelligent and very interesting Shakespearean actor by trade,
Very good.
Ahmed Zakayev. Um, and he is part of and the Ichkerian government in exile. Ichkeria is a region in Chechnya, for those who don't know, is part of the Free Nations of Post-Russia Forum,
Yes.
which is a an organization moved towards the decolonization of the Russian Federation,
But you're
independence
seeing
for
this
a
in
number of people.
Armenia and Azerbaijan as well,
Yeah.
and to a certain extent in the ordinary Georgian people. Perhaps not.
Well, I mean, the ordinary Georgian people are wonderful. I think they have not stopped protesting against Georgian Dream, or more accurately, Russian Nightmare.
Hmm.
since the or since the elections were stolen, and these were genuinely stolen. I know we hear a lot about stolen elections
Yes.
in 2024. I think they're on, if I recall correctly, 239 or 240 days of straight protest. I interviewed a politician there, Marika Mikiashvili, on my podcast. She is excellent. She's brave as well. The situation in Georgia for any opposition politician is very, very bad. Most of them are in prison.
I find one of the most interesting things about Georgia today is if you speak Russian in Georgia, you get ignored.
Well, you get a slap. And this is the terrible irony is that Georgia is possibly one of the most independent, other than of course Ukraine at the moment, of the former Soviet
Yeah.
satellites that are not in the EU or NATO, and Russia is not popular. So Georgian Dream have pulled a bait and switch, basically. They've come to power saying, we will not repeat the war of 2008. We will not go to war with Russia, but we hate Russia. And now they're doing Russia's bidding. I've seen photographs of FSB plated cars in the streets of Tbilisi, for example.
Mm.
It's a very clever move that Georgian Dream and their Russian backers have pulled. But the people aren't standing for it. Again, refer to Arendt. Violence is not power. You can use violence for so long, but as soon as you do, you have lost power.
Yep. 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 Absolutely. So
Which I
let's go
think
back. Can we,
segues us
yes, we want to go. We want to go to
well.
Palestine Action. So the Palestine Action, there is an element of desperation in the Palestine Action
Yeah.
activities, which need to be condemned. But there are laws to condemn that, and there are laws
Yes.
that exist that we could have used.
Yes.
And
I mean, they committed Section 91A burglary.
yep.
They actually that's an open question because they didn't enter a building. Sorry, I'm getting into the weeds of police law,
They did enter private territory.
which is not a building. For burglary, you need to enter a building, if I recall
Uh,
correctly. Um, they committed
arguably,
criminal damage,
arguably,
and
they could have done us a favor by exposing the very poor security that surrounds military airfields.
well, they did, and they embarrassed the state enormously, which is why they're now prescribed.
But of course, for embarrassing the state, we should not be prescribing people.
No,
This is the behavior of a country like Russia.
it is, and it's. I found it, and I was shocked and despairing as a Democrat. I sit vaguely on the left as far as it comes to British politics. I think I'd probably find a home in the Liberal Democrats, although I'm not a party member.
I'm afraid I'm told I would find a home there too. I'm not a part.
Well, you're a Tory white, so
I do like the Liberal Club
yeah,
though.
so do I. It's lovely. But again, we're getting distracted. Palestine
Sorry.
Action should not have been prescribed. It represents a desperation on the part of the British state, and it's such a misstep. In my view, I mean, I have a master's degree in international security. My focus was on terrorism and criminality and comparing the two. Terrorism is a very slippery thing to define.
Hmm.
And we have a definition in it in law in the UK under the Terrorism Act. However, it's, as I said, it's slippery. So Palestine Action was able to be prescribed as a terrorist group, despite the fact that they have killed nobody and they do not call for death.
Yes, they haven't threatened to kill anyone either.
No.
Exactly.
And that to me is utterly perverse. And it runs contrary to the wider thread through British political life of general support that I can see for the normal people of Gaza who are being massacred in droves. And it is an attempt to restrict political speech. And that is what we're beginning to see. A gentleman was arrested for holding I forget if it was the page from Private Eye itself
It's a
or a
cartoon from
cartoon.
Private Eye. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
blown up.
yeah. And Private Eye is a wonderful newspaper that I'm very happy to be published in. Um, that is if I can think of an arm of British journalism that is brave and good at their job, it's Private Eye.
Yeah.
And holding up a page from Private Eye and then being arrested, although the I believe the police later apologized.
They still kept him for 6 hours.
Yes, 6 hours, and that's 2 grand an hour if he wants to go to court. Or is it three these days? But
But also, if you're
it's
elderly, it's
going through that
stressful.
anyway.
He was
Of course,
bruised,
it's
apparently.
stressful.
He was bruised, handcuffed and bruised. That's unacceptable.
Well, and I do have to offer some defense to my former colleagues. Nearly everybody gets handcuffed when getting arrested because you don't know who people are.
Hmm.
So, and it's a very low level abuse of force. And if you're going to get arrested, if I was going to get arrested by my former colleagues, I would probably expect to be handcuffed. I handcuffed everybody I arrested. Um, and I don't know the situation about the circumstances of the arrest. I do know that I wouldn't have done it. Arresting is a power that is reserved in the individual officer. You cannot order an officer to arrest somebody. You can put pressure on them if you want, if you're that kind of boss, but you cannot, it is an illegal order to say, go and arrest that man. That
Interesting.
officer has to say, I suspect, not believe, that they've committed an offense, therefore I will use my powers. Now, this is the issue, and this is where we're going to get in the weeds here with Palestine Action, is that if you, as we've seen, if you hold a sign that doesn't explicitly say I support Palestine Action, but has the words Palestine and Action, people are getting arrested for that. And people generally are not being charged, but they're still getting arrested.
And they're wasting so much money as a
They're
result.
wasting money, they're wasting police time, and they're throttling free speech. And this is why it's so dangerous, because political speech in support of an organization which has carried out acts of crime, criminal damage, which we'll get on to, the UK has a long and fairly proud history of, is is so dangerous. And it reeks of desperation on the part of the state. It reeks of pandering to parts of our society who want to lock everybody up and hang every other criminal.
Or
And it is,
expel them from the country.
yeah, or expel them from the country. It is frankly undemocratic
Yeah.
and dangerous. And we should not allow it. We should not be engaging in this. And perhaps we need to look at the prescription laws. They were brought in fairly reasonably to
2003.
tackle. Hmm? Yeah,
2003, I think.
yeah. In the wake of 9/11, right? So all of this, so much of this stuff, this democratic backsliding can be be found in what Timothy Snyder describes as terror management.
Hmm.
Modern tyranny is terror management. You have a great event, then you say, oh, well, we need more security, therefore we need to adjust your liberties. And that's very dangerous. And that's the road we're beginning to walk down now in the UK, and it needs to be fought against. Even if you don't support Palestine Action, which legally I have to say I don't because I don't want to go to prison, legally you have to come out against their prescription as an organization which tried to kill nobody. I
Yeah.
mean, people will often cite, well, there was a member who was charged with GBH, and they were charged with GBH. These chaps who raided an RAF base and damaged a couple of RAF planes quite badly, they can be charged with criminal damage. We have laws for this.
Yes. You see, this seems to me like we're tarring an entire group with the crimes committed by a few individuals. You see something very similar going on with the asylum hotels, which over the last few days I've realized there is a parallel. If three people have abused women, uh, if three migrants have abused women, and then suddenly there's a cat call to tear down the asylum hotels, to expel all the migrants in those asylum hotels to label them all illegal migrants and all potential criminals, or indeed, I think the language is not that they are potential criminals; they are criminals. Um, this is the language of the ghetto. And
It concerns
not only that,
me.
but the police have advised people in some of these hotels that they're under curfew from 5:30. That is the language of the Venetian ghetto and
It
later.
concerns me greatly, and I think it concerns me from a number of angles. I am worried about the increasing power and strength of the far right in the United Kingdom, and this is being used to aggrandize themselves. I'm also worried, and I think there are legitimate concerns outside of the far right about high migration rates,
Hmm.
and we need to address those. Being anti-immigration, being concerned about immigration is not anymore a right-wing issue, it's a centrist one. And we need to be realistic about that. And we shouldn't condemn everybody. We should condemn those who do reprehensible acts or say reprehensible things. I don't think people who say something should be locked up. I think they should be freely condemned in the public square if they've decided to join it. And it's it's a growing meanness in the British political debate.
Yeah.
You either come out purely on one side or purely the other. There's becoming much less room for nuance.
Oh, I think it's important to fight against that. I think we have to have as much nuance as possible.
Oh, I agree. And
And
that's why I come out against these right-wing groups who are saying ban the hotels. But at the same time, I recognize that many concerns that people are having about migration are legitimate.
well, a
And
lot of these concerns would be dealt with perfectly well if instead of putting all the money into paying for hotels, we put the money into hiring more people to work in the Home Office to process the applications. We can't know if somebody
yeah,
is legal or illegal until they've been processed.
yeah. And we need to, I think it goes so far as we need to have a look at some of the refugee conventions and question whether or not every person from Afghanistan could claim asylum in the United Kingdom.
Yeah, yeah.
Likewise with
I, I, I,
Eritrea.
I think it shouldn't necessarily be a conversation that we have in the UK. I think one of the things that Rishi Sunak missed was
Hmm,
the opportunity when it first really rose to assemble Europe particularly and possibly America, where the same conversation is taking place,
hmm,
and uh, work out internationally whether or not the 1951 Refugee Convention is still fit for purpose and what needs to be changed to bring it in line with 21st century concerns. Because the 1951 Refugee Convention was targeting a group of people, a very small group of people who were moving across the continent in the wake of the Holocaust and various other
yeah.
awful events which occurred during World War II. And a lot of people had been stopped moving because they were required because they required exit papers in order to move from one country to another. And the Refugee Convention was saying you don't need these. It doesn't matter how you get to a country, as long as you get to
Yeah.
that country will process you. Now, with Suella Braverman's laws, the illegal migration law and the nationality and borders law, that has
Mm.
changed. It's been changed by Britain. So Britain is out of
Yeah.
step with the 1951 Refugee Convention. And this is absurd. If Britain is anticipating the route that the world should go down, that's fine. But it has to be a global decision. We are challenging and changing a global definition, a global convention that we were instrumental.
We wrote. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it is no longer fit for purpose
yeah,
because it is being applied where perhaps it shouldn't be
yes, and
to large groups of people,
it's being
enormous groups of people.
um,
And we have to I mean, I say I sit on the left, but I come out against the Refugee Convention, which seems a bit bizarre. But we have
but
to
as
recognize
long as
the
that refugee
concerns of people.
convention is there,
Well,
challenge
yeah, there has to be a refugee convention.
but challenging the refugee convention as we've got it and ignoring it, like claiming that people want to leave the ECHR, makes us look particularly weak and willful. We
It
need to
does.
challenge these things internationally. If we think the ECHR is wrong, then we need to have an international meeting to discuss both the ECHR and the Refugee Convention. It cannot be done by one nation alone.
No, we do need an international forum about it, but there isn't political will to do that in the UK because there isn't political will to do very much in the UK, it
But I
seems.
think there is political will to do it in Europe. I think there's
Yes.
political will to do it in America. And frankly, Britain was in a perfect position during the early days of Rishi Sunak's regime. If Sunak walked away with nothing other than that, he would have walked away with something extraordinary. Instead, what was achieved during Rishi Sunak's period? A little bit of, nose wiping of the mess left behind
Yeah,
by.
well, I think that was his primary aim is to try
Well,
I'm not going to swear, but to fix the mess that was left behind by the
it's
lettuce.
it's still dripping. It's still
It
dripping.
is. That lettuce has rotten and the garbage juice is all over the floor.
One month of Liz Truss and everything goes to pot.
Oh,
But
yeah, and she's
it,
still in the public square. If I'd been humiliated in that manner, I think I would go live in a cabin in the woods.
it is extraordinary. She's now giving advice, I believe, to Reform UK. But there we are. That probably tells us all a lot of
Yeah.
Reform UK is doing. They've got Andrea Jenkins, who is defined by the one finger salute, and Liz
Mm.
Truss. And there's talk of Suella Braverman going over to them too, though her husband has just come back from them. So it's a sort of it's rather like a traffic jam, I suspect, at the gates of Reform UK. That takes us back to the
Yeah.
Liberal Club, where I think Farage has been going in and out of trying
Well,
to.
it's because he can't smoke at his other clubs. The
Um,
Liberal Club is a private terrace.
but in terms of democracy, there is a place where democracy is actually happening, which I think you know more about than I do.
Oh,
Uh,
yes.
in
Yes.
in 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 Ukraine.
Yes. Well, Ukraine has gone through, over the last few days, a rather significant political crisis. President Zelensky signed on the 22nd a law called Law 12414, which was on the face of it, a simple restructuring of how the criminal procedure system works. However, it also included a restructuring of Ukraine's two anti-corruption agencies, that's NABU and SAPO. These two agencies are independent, or were independent, fiercely so. They were set up in the wake of the Revolution of Dignity, which took place in 2014, and they were designed to curb, in a significant way, corruption. And they were brought under, in this new law, the auspices of the Prosecutor General, who is a presidential appointee, and they would be able to stop, start, deal with investigations, direct the investigative direction of NABU and SAPO. And as you can see, that's quite dangerous. Now, there are countries where this operates in a similar way, the United States being one. However, Ukraine, since it won its independence from the USSR, has had a very painful struggle with corruption, and to a lesser extent, still does today. And that is it's a Soviet hangover,
Hmm.
right? So people were very concerned, and Ukrainians know corruption. They often have to deal with it. They don't like it. They don't like it at all. And they like it even less now that many left the country at the start of the full-scale invasion and came back with experiences from less corrupt countries where previously, because Ukraine is quite a poor country, they would not have been able to. So they came out, and they came out in thousands. On the night where it wasn't quite sure whether or not Zelensky had signed it on the 22nd, I went to the square near Maidan, about as close as you can get to the presidential offices, and there were a couple of thousand people there. And it's the first time I've seen an anti-government protest in Ukraine.
Mm.
It was young people, a lot of young people, almost all under the age of conscription, and a lot of young women. Of course, all the the vast majority of the young men, they're away. They're fighting the war. The young men that I did see, and I did see a number, were wounded veterans, and they let their voice be heard, and they let it be heard loudly and peacefully. It was remarkable. I was I've police officer for 7 years. I've done public order policing, and I was a bit amazed because I saw in the first night 5 police officers in the area of the protest. There were 2 dialogue police, which British citizens may recognize these if you've ever been to a demo. They're very similar to our liaison police, where they wear a coloured tabard and they're there in amongst the crowd talking and stuff. And there are a line of police to go make sure that nobody goes up the road to the presidential offices. But you're not going up that road anyway because of the martial law, and it's a military protected area.
Yeah.
But they went out, they had a protest, they ignored the curfew at midnight because martial law's in effect. There's a midnight curfew. They straight ignored it, and it went on for a few hours past then. They weren't cleared from the square or anything like that. And it's discovered that Zelensky had signed the law. So people started protesting again. And that night, there were maybe 2 or 3 times more people there. The square was rammed, and it was peaceful. Again, very few police. I was told by another journalist, oh, they are here, they're just around the corner, which is not something we would do in Britain. There would be lines of them there. The Ukrainians are generally pretty well behaved at a public order event unless you really annoy them. And they were really annoyed, but they weren't to that point yet. And in response to this, Zelensky has issued they're starting a new law that will bring the independence of Nabu and Sapo back. So it will no longer be essentially indirectly under presidential control, which is something people are obviously very afraid of. And it showed me in Ukraine, democracy works.
Mhm.
Civil society went out, they spoke out in every newspaper. Almost every newspaper came out against it. The Kyiv Independent wrote against it. Ukraina Pravda wrote against it. And the people came out in the streets in their thousands. They protested, they had a demo. They let Zelensky know that this is a very bad idea. We do not like this. And he put his hands up and said, okay. Now,
Democracy in action, isn't it?
democracy in action. Yeah. A political cock up, misstep, we shall call it, followed by.
Maybe not. I've heard stuff elsewhere that Nabu and Sapo were being targeted by
They were, and this is something I should get into. Now,
propaganda.
Zelensky, in his justification for the change, said that they've been penetrated by Russian agents. The Russians know
Quite
everything about
badly.
what they're doing. Yeah, quite badly. And they're not very effective. People are allowed to flee the country, investigations get stalled, and all of these are good reasons to change an organization and to have some good reforms. The thing that made Ukrainians afraid was bringing it under political control because they've seen that kind of thing before
But
and they don't want it again.
equally, I think again I have to go back to something you said that that this is a system which works quite reasonably in the USA under political
Hmm.
control, and more than that, the USA were demanding that Zelensky did not sign this, and it
Yes.
strikes me that a country that has been the puppet, the poodle of another country, of Russia, is not going to turn round or should not turn round and be the poodle of America. I think
Well,
that's
I think
I find.
I think calling Ukraine a poodle of Russia is how you start a fight in Kyiv and everywhere else in the country. They would not say that. They would say that they were occupied.
Well, absolutely.
Uh,
But until they got rid of and until the Maidan protests,
yeah,
it was
and yeah,
it
until
was
the
not clear.
revolution of until the revolution of dignity, there were of course deep, deep ties. And the Ukrainians not happy about that.
Yeah.
And they were never really that happy about that. There were those in the East which felt stronger ties to Russia because of the history there. If you look at the history of deportations and replacements, which is something Russia does throughout its imperial history.
Well,
Um,
it's very clear in Kazakhstan as well.
yeah,
Um,
and they attempted it in the Baltics, but didn't quite stick. Although Estonia still has a Russian fifth column of some size. I don't think this is Ukraine following America's orders or direction. I think this is Zelensky following the orders and direction of the Ukrainian people.
oh no, no, no. What I'm suggesting is that the is that is that Trump and and America had very little right to tell Zelensky what to do at that particular point, but there was quite firm pressure for Zelensky not to.
There was firm pressure, and there was firm pressure from the Europeans as well. And
Absolutely.
I don't think that there's necessarily anything wrong with if you think your friend or ally is making a mistake, saying, "I think you're making a mistake."
Oh, 100%. I entirely agree, but
But
nevertheless,
I do see the hypocrisy from the Trump administration. But I think that may have come from those more pro-Ukraine figures, Kellogg and Rubio, within the administration that didn't want to give the Russians, etc., any ammunition. That's me being very kind to them. And unfortunately, this political crisis, brief though it seems to have been, did provide figures like that awful Harrod and Marjorie Taylor Greene to go on Twitter, get an enormous amount of views about what she said, saying that the Ukrainians are protesting against the dictator Zelensky and the war, which is absolute
yes,
nonsense. The Ukrainian they were they were not protesting against defending against Russian imperialism. They hate having to do it. They wish it would end, but they will do it. And this is something I said in my piece from the protest. They are dealing with a political crisis at home. They are having a democratic conversation, but on the front lines, the purpose is the same. The purpose is clear. Ukrainians are united. They will talk, they will debate, and they will debate with some passion. But when somebody comes in to try to an outsider or another this imperialist power to try to tell them how to live their life or take them over entirely, they will turn around and knife them in the chest, which is what's happening.
yes. Ukraine has been incredibly brave, but my concern is that this is a blip that didn't need to happen.
It is an unforced error. Yeah,
It
I
seems
agree.
extraordinary that it went through Parliament so quickly. Um,
Yep.
and of course, there would have been another constitutional problem if Zelensky had used his veto, and a lot of the good stuff which was in that law would then not have been enacted.
Yeah, and a lot of the people were calling, one of the chants at the protest was, veto.
Yeah.
The other, there were a number of chants, don't sign it. Remember Maidan, of course, Putin, Julio.
Ah, yes. Don't need to
That was very
translate.
common. Don't need to translate that one.
No. It is, of course, for anybody who wants to know his surname. Not his patronymic. Not suggesting anything about his father there. Well, maybe we are.
Maybe we
But
are.
yes.
And I thought it was an excellent expression of patriotic protest done right.
Me too. Me too. I thought it was impressive,
Yeah.
and I think it's something that we in. I'm getting tired of using the term West because there are so many so many
Wests.
countries which are not in the West that are in defiance of Putin's action. I
Yeah, well, there are many.
in the democratic world,
Yeah.
there's something that we can learn from uh, Ukraine in the last week.
I think so. I've always thought that there's something we can learn from the French. I feel like they've mastered the art of protest, although they do it a little bit more violently than I saw the Ukrainians go about it. Uh, I think what was a shock, perhaps, to the Ukrainian establishment was just how many people were willing to come out, and because it was quite brave,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Um,
I hope ordinary people in Russia will be looking across at this and realize that protest is possible
yeah,
if,
and
if the
it
numbers
was
are big enough and if people are prepared to stand up even against the FSB,
yeah.
and the awesome powers that Putin has got at his disposal. But the problem with Putin and modern Russia is there's not very many people left to police the streets or to
Oh
guard
no, oh, they're all dead.
presidential palaces and so on, because they're all fighting Ukraine.
Yeah,
Has
they're
no
fighting this useless imperialist war.
um,
And the reason why I say it was brave was not for fear of crackdown by Kyiv Metro Police or SBU. Uh, it's because it's a very large crowd
and
in a city that regularly gets
gets
bombed.
hit by drones, by Putin's bombs.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and you saw a similar crowd in Kharkiv, which is within glide bomb range. I mean,
Yeah. And in
and
Odessa,
and and in Odessa, which and the Russians didn't bomb these protests probably because they knew how much blowback there would be if they did. But the risk was still there. The Russians have bombed hospitals, schools, civilian apartment blocks. They don't. It's not the loss of life that they much would have cared about.
I think we have to add there the right that these bombs and the drones have got little cameras on the front of them, so they know exactly what they're doing. This is not collateral damage.
Yeah, and
Something
the
Palin points out
yeah.
regularly.
Well, the FPV drones that you see around the front, they certainly do. The Shahid drones, the long range ones, the ones that can reach Kyiv because the FPVs can't. Um, I think the newer models do because they rely on a different system. But with the Iskander and the ballistic missiles, you can essentially get on a map, pick a target. Like, I mean, they knew where the protest, they would have known where the protest was because it's very easy to find, and they would have known where to hit. And it would have been, and this is what I say whenever an Iskander, a ballistic missile, hits an apartment block or something along those lines. These weapons have a circular error probable. This is military parlance for they will hit within this diameter circle 50% of the time. And Iskander is about 15 to 30 meters.
Hmm.
So that's pretty good. So when it hits an apartment block, they're aiming at the apartment block.
Yes.
And they're doing it for the same reasons that Hitler bombed London. It's terror. And it isn't working, but it is bad.
Yes. But I think we have to bring this to a close. We've been talking quite
Yeah.
a lot of time. But thank you enormously. I hope you're safe at the moment.
Oh, yeah, I'm okay. I'm in Ukraine. It is it's fine. Um, the air raid alarms are, a regular occurrence, and occasionally you do hear the sound of the anti-aircraft fire, but I'm not in the east, and the risk is mitigated. So it is a country at war, and this is something I need to say because I've seen some awful actors come out and show Ukrainian girls dancing and having a good time. Ukraine is huge. In Lviv, out in the east, in the west, in the Carpathians, etc., you don't generally get hit. And in Kyiv, you'll see people dancing and you'll see people having a good time, but they know the risks and they know that there are risks that the area alert might go off and 10 minutes later an Iskander might land where you are.
Hmm.
And that's something that only gets worse the further east you go. and the further north you go. So in Kharkiv, it's a very regular thing. You recommend if you have a Western phone to turn it off. Out in the east, don't even bring your Western phone with you because the Russians target Western SIM cards. It is a war that sort of rolls across the country. Whenever there's an air alert, you see on the map the oblasts go red
Yeah.
as the shaheeds roll through them, and you don't really know where they're going to land. And this is why the air defense is so important. This is why the Patriots are so vital, and not just the Patriots, but interceptor drones to take out the shaheeds and AI turrets. If I may, do delete this if you want in the edit, Tim. But I would like to. Is it possible to recommend an organization that if people have some scratch they want to donate to?
Absolutely.
So the Ukrainian air defense is vital. The Patriots are vital, but the big thing is the Shaheeds. And Patriots can't be used against Shaheeds because it's economically unviable. A Patriot missile costs $1 million. A Shaheed is like $30,000. So the Ukrainians are building AI turrets that are armed with machine guns because they're much better than a simple bloke on the back of a truck, which is a lot of the Ukrainian air defense. An organization that I know that has done a lot of good work is One Team, One Fight, and they're trying to raise money to buy the Condor Brigade of the Condor Battalion of the Brevi Brigade of the Ukrainian National Guard, one of these AI-assisted air defense turrets, so they can shoot down drones that are operating within their area and shoot down Shaheeds that are going towards the cities that are flying over their area. They are trying to get there. They need about $40,000, and I think they're sitting at about 15 at the moment. So if anybody's got any spare scratch, or you want to spare a coffee and buy a machine gun turret, then donate to One Team, One Fight.
And we can leave the link.
Yeah, yeah. I'll send you the link to their thing.
Yeah. Well, Theo, thank you enormously. I don't think I
Thank
will.
you very much.
I think I won't edit this if you don't mind. We'll just put it out straight so we know it's genuine, and
Yeah.
and we'll put the link on there.